Today we're going to basically, we were doing one-step inequalities before. Today we're going to solve an inequality like we would a normal problem. So these are basically the main types of problems you see. So I figure we'll just go through them and then we'll see how it goes. So just as a reminder, it's just like solving an equation to solve an inequality, right? You want to get the letter by itself. You want to know what's on the other side, numbers together, letters together, so on. But keep in mind, if you multiply or divide by a negative number, then you must reverse your symbol, right? You have to flip it the other way. And as always, we need to make sure we put our letter on the left. So just make sure at the very end of the problem, your letter's on the left side. That way it's easy to graph. So looking at example 1, I see 2x minus 3. So the first thing I should undo is this minus 3. I want to get my letter by itself, so I've got to undo that. Bring down your 2x. Bring down your symbol. And negative 10 plus 3 is negative 7. And then we're going to divide by 2. And half of 7 is negative 3.5. So your answer is numbers more than negative 3.5. For number 2, keep in mind this little trick we learned with the fractions. You can take the side item and pair it up with the top. So we're just going to kind of rewrite it like this. The first thing we always want to do is get our fraction alone. So we're going to undo subtracting 6. We're going to add it. I'm left with 2m over 3. And I get 15 over here. Oh wait, oops, that's a negative 9. Did not see the negative. Negative 9 plus 6 is negative 3. Then we're going to multiply 3 on both sides. So that way we don't have a fraction anymore. I get negative 9. And then finally divide by 2. And I'm going to get m is greater or equal to negative 4.5. Now I want you to keep in mind, we did have a negative number that was dividing, but we did not divide by a negative. We divided by a positive 2, so there's no sign flipping in either of these problems. Right, number 3, our first step should always be distributing. And I do notice that my variable is on the right, so I will have to do the swap flip trick at some point. Negative 2 times x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times negative 5 is a positive 10. Now I don't want to do anything with this 8 because that's all I have over here. So if I undo it, I won't have anything left to work with. So what I can do is undo this 10 by subtracting it. Minus 10 is negative 2. We're going to bring down the negative 2x. Here's the part we want to be careful. I need to divide by negative 2 on both sides because I want to get my x alone. So these just become 1s. And negative 2 divided by itself is a positive 1. But since I divided by a negative, I need to reverse my symbol when I go to write my answer. And then I'll be left with x. Now that I've done that, I'm ready to do the swap, flip trick. Switch places and flip your sign. So any number smaller or equal to 1 will make this inequality true. Go ahead and distribute the 3. So I do have variables on each side. I have numbers, constants on each side. So we need to pick something to undo. It doesn't matter which item you undo. I think I'm going to undo my minus 12 first. And I'll do that by adding it. Left with 3x. I'll still have an x over here. And 12 minus 5 is positive 7. Now the only thing I can undo is this x, because if I try to move this 3x, I won't have anything left to work with. So it has to be this. I want my x's on the same side. So we're going to subtract an x. And then finally divide 2. Be careful, just because I'm dividing doesn't mean I flip my sign around. I divided by a positive, so leave the sign alone. Doesn't change anything. So I'm going to have x is less than, and again I'm going to get 3.5, because that's half of 7. Number 5 is a little different because the problem is I have this whole fraction, this whole thing is being divided by 3. So I've got to take care of that 3 first. So we're going to multiply both sides by 3. And in doing that, these 3's divide into each other and I no longer have a fraction. Seven times 3 is 21. And now we can go ahead and solve it like normal. And if you divide 22 by 4, you're going to get 5.5. So really nothing's changed. You still solve it like you would a normal equation. None of that's new. The only thing is you have to remember if you divide or multiply by a negative number, you're going to have to flip your sign around. We're going to finish up by doing 2 word problems together, starting off with negative 3 times a number. Negative 3n means negative 3 times a number. Then increased, so plus, by 4 is no more than. So is no more than means less than or equal to your mystery number, n, minus 8. So you do have to go through and solve this. I'm going to go ahead and set up number 8, and then we'll go through and solve these. So number 8 says half a number, so you can do 1/2 times a number, decreased by 3, is at least, that means greater or equal to 2. So go ahead and solve these two inequalities for n and see if your answer matches up with mine. Keeping in mind we can have different first steps and still both be right. So go ahead and look at my answers and look at yours. You got to make sure that your symbol is the same way as mine. So the wider end needs to be beside your variable in both cases here. If you'll look, you at some point have to divide by 4. So if you divided by a positive 4, you should not have flipped your sign in your answer. If you divided by a negative 4, then you do flip your sign in the answer. The way I did it, I had to do the swap flip trick at the very end. So I made sure to switch my sign around and put my letter on the other side. And for number 8, I paired up my 1 and my n together, so it looked a little easier. It actually looks just like number 2. You see that fraction and that constant. You can see a fraction and a constant.